Who are the lost tribes of Israel? What happened to them? Where did they go? Where are their descendants, and where are they now? The lost tribes of Israel are ancient but still remaining communities who have maintained their Jewish identity for thousands of years, even while living in some of the most remote places and being isolated from the mainstream or worldwide Jewish community. The lost tribes are descendants of historically Jewish people from the ancient kingdoms of what was called thousands of years ago Israel and Judah. Now, these tribes were scattered throughout the ancient world when, under the Assyrian and the Babylonian empires, the kingdoms of Israel and Judah were invaded, and the children of Israel were carried away captive between about the 5th and 6th centuries BC. More recently, when the Romans conquered the kingdom of Judea, or the region of Judea, around 70 AD, more Jewish people were dispersed out of the land of Israel, and then further dispersed throughout history in seasons like the Spanish Inquisition, when communities of God-fearing Jews, for their faith and for their identity, were kicked out of the Spanish Empire into the farthest places of the world. Each of these conquests throughout history forced Jewish people from the lands they knew, Israel, and more recently the lands they inhabited, into corners of the world they weren't familiar with. Now, they either fled or they were taken captive to other regions in the north, south, east, and even west. Some traveled south through the Saudi Peninsula and Egypt into Africa. Others followed the ancient Silk Road out of the Middle East through Central Asia on a well-established historic trade route into the Orient, where they settled in what today are parts of Central Asia, China, even India. Over the centuries, these scattered Jewish people groups continued to migrate as they encountered wave after wave of anti-Semitism and even persecution. Of course, today we know that Jewish people reside all over the world, the most well-known Jewish populations being in Israel, North America, and Europe. But still, millions of Jewish people also live in places like Central and South America, Africa, Central and Eastern Asia, and possibly even the remote Pacific Islands. Many of them have yet to be recognized by the mainstream worldwide Jewish community because for generation after generation, they hid their Jewish identities. Or because under various empires or religious systems, they were forced to outwardly convert to other religions. That could be Catholicism or more recently Islam. As these scattered Jewish people settled amid foreign cultures that didn't understand their historic identity, persecution forced some of them, many of them, to practice their faith in secret. For generations, many of these Jewish communities remained hidden from worldwide consciousness and were even considered lost until recently in world history. But today, more and more of these Jewish communities are being discovered and emerging into worldwide consciousness. Their Jewish identity was never lost to themselves and was never lost or forgotten to God. They've never forgotten who they are or where they came from, the land of Israel and the people of Israel. As the lost tribes of Israel have emerged into worldwide consciousness in recent decades, we see them fulfilling Bible prophecy by even immigrating to Israel, what's called making Aliyah. In the scriptures, centuries before the life and ministry of Jesus, Isaiah in chapter 11, verse 12 said, "He, God, will raise a banner for the nations when He regathers the exiles of Israel. He will assemble the scattered people of Judah from the four corners of the earth." Members of the lost tribes of Israel are even making Aliyah, which means immigrating or becoming citizens of the modern state of Israel. Aliyah literally means going up into the land. They're returning to their ancient Jewish homeland, just as God promised thousands of years ago that they would. As believers in Jesus, we know that the only way for anyone, Jewish or Gentile alike, to be reconciled to God and to be saved, redeemed from our sin, is through Jesus, whose Hebrew name, Yeshua, literally means salvation. Here at Jewish Voice, we've made a missional commitment to reach all remaining lost tribes with the gospel, the good news of Jesus the Messiah. We've ministered to Jewish people in Ethiopia, where the Beta Israel, Beta Avraham, Gafat, and even Yebir, culturally Somali Jewish people, believe themselves to be descended from the tribes of Judah and also Dan. In other parts of Africa, like Zimbabwe in the southern African region, the Lemba tribe have an oral history which tells them that they're literally sons of Aaron, suggesting they have ties to the tribe of Levi. In northeast India, The B'nai Menashe belonged to the tribe of Manasseh. And for more than 20 years, Jewish Voice has met practical, even life-threatening needs in the name of Jesus to open a door to share what we believe is most important, the gospel, with these lost tribes communities. But there are so many more scattered Jewish communities all over the world who have not heard the good news that their Messiah has come and his name is Yeshua, Jesus. They must be reached, and our ultimate goal here at Jewish Voice is that all remaining scattered Jewish people groups on the earth have the opportunity to hear and respond to that good news, that gospel message, to fulfill what the prophets foresaw thousands of years ago.